Welcome back. So as the country looks forward to the 2024 national and provincial elections, many people are struggling with making ends meet. A credit rating agency Fitch has flagged low economic growth and rising government spending as some of the factors that have affected South Africa's credit rating. Well, to give us an outlook for the country's economy for 2024 and perhaps help you make decisions as we get closer to those elections, we are joined by SABC News economics editor, Mr. Tshepo Mongai. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, lady.
I don't know if we still say compliments, but compliments nonetheless. We do appreciate. I think let's start off firstly with the CPI numbers that we've just had come through from Stats SA, 5.1, down from 5.5. What do you make of those?
Well, I think it's generally in line with the expectations. The market was looking mostly at around 5.2%. The trend is showing a downward trend. Of course, inflation is still a challenge in the economy. Households are under pressure because of very high cost of living, and obviously the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee, they are looking at this number very, very closely, and to see where areas of pressure point. Remember, tomorrow they will give us their outlook in terms of what their expectations are, and out of that we'll be able to get a sense of how soon we're likely to get a rate cut. But globally and elsewhere, the discussion is around when a rate cut will happen.
That sounds optimistic.
Of course, I think that's the current picture. We know that things change very quickly, but as things stand, of course, the rand since the last MPC has weakened slightly, but I think there is some base, some stability in a way. The risks are still there, but I think as a country, we've managed to address a whole lot of risks that could be inflationary, but we still have those exogenous factors that can actually weaken the local currencies. We still have elections, of course, that also remain a risk. The load shedding is still with us, but I think corporate SA, they find a way of going around it. So we'll see, but I think generally 2024 should be a year that we see a rate cut.
Yeah, well, I mean, that certainly is something that South Africans are keen to hear. And let's talk a little bit about some of the, and I want to focus a little bit on the numbers that have just come in, and not in too much detail, but of course, look at some of the contributing factors, right? 2023 was a particularly difficult year. And so some of those contributing factors, one would be afraid that those would very much continue on as a trend in 2024.
I think we've managed to address many of them. The geopolitical tensions that are ongoing, of course, they remain with us. They are still with us. There are some structural issues in the local economy that the government is trying to address. I mean, issues around infrastructure. We need to get investment going, and our infrastructure is one stumbling block, even in our attempts to lure investors that should come in here and build factories that can actually create jobs that we need. And those issues we have not dealt with. The issues around competition, for example, there's still a whole lot of issues that needs to be addressed. We have very few players that are quite dominant in the local economy, and it's very difficult for many players who want to come into this market and bring in competition, because the incumbent intentionally make it very difficult for new players.
Yeah, I know that this is a difficult question to ask you because, of course, as the editor, you observe what our economy does. And I might ask you then to perhaps not necessarily throw the bones, but see some of the contributing factors, right? Next month, we should soon be seeing the budget policy statement being delivered. Around this time, you've got a lot of organizations, some of them civil society, saying, well, this is an austerity budget, a word that many vulnerable groups really don't like to hear, right? The likelihood that we'll continue hearing that word. And then the extension of social security, is that going to be a big talking point in 2024?
Well, the extension, we know it's going to happen, but I think we need a permanent solution, and that's where the discussions are moving into. A permanent solution. Yes, it looks like the government is stuck in this. They will have to provide a whole lot of social support to
even the social relief grant.
Yeah, to many young healthy South Africans who cannot find employment. I mean, there are other initiatives that have been in place, but they're just not gaining traction. The Presidential Youth Initiative, the Employment Tax Incentive, all those were put in place in order to get more young people into employment. But it's not. I mean, the agricultural sector has been one sector that the government has been looking and saying, perhaps this is one sector that can create a whole lot of job for our young people.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing that. So now, I think being election year, we're likely to see a politician, of course, speaking to the gallery and trying to appease the voters, and I think that will be one.
Okay.
But still, we know that our fiscus, it will be hard for it to carry this weight.
Right. Okay, I need to let you go, but I'm going to ask you to, in really 10 seconds, right? 3 points that you'll be looking at as you assess the manifestos of the various political parties in the run-up to these elections, perhaps giving us an idea of which sections to look at in these manifestos from an economic growth point of view.
I think employment, but it must be practical steps that can be done immediately in order to deal with the very high unemployment, because the unemployment crisis in South Africa need a lot of innovation.
Right.
Things that can be done today, bring in a lot of young people, bring in the private sector, so that irrespective of whether someone has a skill or not, but can be able to do something.
Yeah. Well, that's what Mr. Tshepo Mongai is going to be looking at in those manifestos of the many political candidates and parties that are vying for your vote. He's looking for jobs, jobs, jobs. And you can, of course, let us know what it is that you want to see in those manifestos for an economic point of view. That there, SABC News economics editor, Mr. Tshepo Mongai.